Welcome, everybody. We're just opening the webinar and people are going to start coming in. So thank you so much for being here with us tonight for our Scarborough Southwest All Candidates debate. My name is Corey. I'm from one of the organizing groups, and you'll meet the rest of us in a little bit who are here tonight. So thank you again for coming to spend your evening with us. And you'll get a few further notes in terms of how the evening is going to work in a little bit, but hopefully you're somewhere comfortable and you can sit back and listen and learn and ask your questions as well. So there will be an opportunity for you to put questions in the question and answer, and we will have a segment of the event to be question and answer after we ask some moderator questions that have already been prepared. So welcome, everybody. We're filing in. We're going to give people one or two more minutes, and then we will start. Welcome, everybody. Scarborough Southwest constituents, so happy that you're here with us for this opportunity to listen and learn and ask questions. And we hope that you enjoy and have an opportunity to learn what you've come for and ask some of your important questions that relate to your riding. So, okay, we'll just give it, I think, one more minute. People are still filing in, so thank you for your patience. And yeah, maybe you're outside, maybe you've got a nice cup of tea with you, or maybe you've got a glass of wine, and I hope you can just sit back and enjoy. And yeah. And shortly we'll get to meet all of the candidates and the rest of the crew here. All right, I think we'll wait till we get just a few more people. We are expecting over 100 participants. So we'll see. We'll just, I think, wait one more minute. Does that sound good, team? Wait one more minute. Okay, got the thumbs up there. People are still filing in. Welcome. If you didn't hear, my name's Corey. I'm from one of the organizing groups, East End Climate Collective. So thank you for joining us tonight and spending your time to listen to some of the candidates in Scarborough Southwest. All right, I think, Nick, we should get started. I'm going to turn it over to Nick.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming. We will be recording this evening's debate. Welcome to Scarborough Southwest's All Candidates Debate. My name is Nick Nanos. A special welcome to our candidates. I must thank the members of GreenPAC, the Toronto East End Climate Collective, Access Alliance, Asian Court Community Services, Birchmount Bluffs Neighborhood Center, Climate Fast, More Neighbors, Toronto, Scarborough Civic Action Network, the TTC Riders, the West Scarborough Neighborhood Center, Toronto 350, and our moderator, John Beers. Without the participation of the aforementioned, plus you, the people of Scarborough Southwest, and our event sponsor, Van City, represented by Jan Paul, this debate would not be possible. Some quick technical things. Please put your questions in the Q&A box. The menu item is on the bottom of your screen. I now ask Jan Paul of Van City to say a few words.
Nick, thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Jan Paul. I'm a senior associate at Van City Community Investment Bank as part of the Clean Energy Finance team. Van City Community Investment Bank, or VCIB, is the only bank in Canada that focuses exclusively with working with organizations to drive social, economic, and environmental change. Climate change is here, and it affects all of us. In 2021, VCIB's financing supported innovative clean energy projects that avoided 4,300 tons of carbon emissions. The real estate market continues to soar, highlighting the need for affordable alternatives. In 2021, VCIB helped to create or preserve nearly 1,200 affordable housing units. This evening, we are putting the issues that matter at the forefront of the election. Regardless of the outcome, we aim to work collectively with government and business leaders to make real and tangible change at this critical point in time. Good luck to all of the participants in this evening's debate. We are looking forward to hearing your innovative ideas and solutions. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Dawn, and I am a resident of Scarborough Southwest. I'm going to read tonight's land acknowledgement. The land I'm standing on today is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. I wish to honor this treaty as a newcomer guest that asks us to not take more than our share. I also acknowledge that these lands were taken by duplicity and force, and that reconciliation means land back. To make this land acknowledgement a more meaningful practice, it will include a call to action. Scarborough contains the largest Indigenous population within Toronto, and within Scarborough Southwest, we have a Thunder Woman Healing Lodge in the process of being built. We invite participants and attendees to learn more about the importance of this space and why there is a need for it by visiting and/or supporting Thunder Woman Healing Lodge. I'll put the link to that in the chat for everyone. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for this evening, John Beers.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Scarborough Southwest, our Scarborough Southwest debate here. My name is John Beers. I am a resident, business owner, and community leader in Scarborough Southwest, and I'll be moderating tonight. All four major party candidates for our riding were invited, and tonight we are joined by three of those candidates. Dolly Begum, our incumbent from the Ontario NDP, Cara Brideau from the Ontario Green Party, Lisa Patel from the Ontario Liberal Party are all here. Brett Snyder from the Ontario PC Party declined the invitation. Now, they will all have an opportunity to introduce themselves in just a moment, but first let's talk about what is going to go on tonight. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for opening remarks, as well as 2 minutes for closing remarks. The order for these remarks have been randomized, and the candidates have been provided with the prepared debate questions on a number of topics, which will be asked by myself, and they will have 2 minutes to respond to each of these questions. There will also be a portion of the debate for questions from the audience. For the audience questions, the candidates will also have 2 minutes to respond. Now, in order for the debate to keep moving along, we're going to allow for enough time for the audience questions and allow for enough time for the audience questions. The candidates will be given a signal when 15 seconds is left for their response. And at that allocated time, we're asking the candidates to kind of wrap up their thoughts. Then at the end of those 15 seconds, we're going to thank them and move on to the next candidate. And candidates, please remember to keep yourself on mute whenever you're not speaking and to not talk over or interrupt the other candidates. We call this a debate, but it's a little bit more of a discussion and a conversation and a chance to hear kind of what the candidates are thinking and planning. As I mentioned, the audience at home will have an opportunity to ask the candidates questions as well by writing them in the Q&A box just at the bottom of your screen there. So go ahead and do that now or anytime during the course of the evening. Now let's give our guests a moment to introduce themselves. So first we're going to go with Dolly, then Cara, and then Lisa. Dolly, go ahead.
Thank you very much, John. Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's great to be here. Thank you to, let me just take a few moments to say thank you to SCAN, TEEC, AXA, TTC Riders, More Neighbors, Access Alliance, West Scarborough Neighborhood Centers, Bartman Bluff Neighborhood Center, and in case I missed anyone, no, SCAN, I did mention. Thank you to all of you for putting this important debate or discussion together. I really appreciate it. My name is Dolly Begum, and I've been the MPP for Scarborough Southwest since 2018, and it has been an incredible honor and a privilege to represent this amazing community. I was the official opposition critic for Citizenship for International Recognition and Immigration Services, as well as the critic for Early Learning and Childcare for my previous 2 years. When I started, I had also been the deputy whip of our caucus, as well as a member of the Social Planning Committee, where I got to do a lot of work for the community and debate on many important bills. Just a little bit about myself. Many of you know I live in Scarborough Southwest. I am from Scarborough Southwest. I've grown up here and gone to school at SATEC at W. Porter. I did my undergraduate degree at University of Toronto and did my master's at UCL on development and planning. One of the things that I truly love about this community is that despite the fact that I came here, an 11-year-old girl with my parents and my younger brother, I feel that this place, this province has given me the opportunity to pursue an education, to do the amazing things that many of us are able to do and have opened many doors for us. After being elected, I have been able to do a lot of great work for our community, which is one of the reasons why I was able to run for office in 2018. I never really thought I was going to go for public office, but when I started, and since it's a discussion, I'll say this. When I started, it was to make sure that our community.
Thank you, Dolly. Thank you, Dolly. We'll go on.
15 minutes? Heads
15
up?
seconds.
15 seconds. Okay.
So no, you're up. You're up. Sorry, the yellow is 15 seconds. Did you see that? Okay. Sorry.
Okay, now I can see it. Okay, thanks very much.
Kara, you're next.
Hello, I'm Kara Brito. Thanks so much to the organizers for having me here today. I also want to say I think it's awesome that I'm here with like 3 kick-ass women. We're all running for public service, and it's just a really nice time to live in Scarborough. So I'm a tradesperson. I'm an electrician with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, local union 353. I just recently passed my trades exam in January, so I'm fully licensed, and that's been a really interesting journey through the apprenticeship program. We talk a lot about skills trades, and I'm kind of the result of all the funding. So but I really wouldn't be here without my local union. I got really involved. I'm on lots of various committees, and it really taught me how important it is to give back to the community. And so I chose the Green Party because I just really love their platform. It's very detailed. The Green Party does a great job at looking into the future as well as taking care of the people who are here now. And I think my common theme throughout this whole evening is just going to be pay people more. I think it can solve a lot of the problems that we have, and we need to give people a living wage, and transit is a huge problem in Scarborough Southwest. I think it's one of the top things I hear from people. And so I guess I just want the opportunity to talk to you guys about the things that the Green Party plans on doing in my riding. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Kara. Okay, now Lisa.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. And I guess my opponents have said it best. So first off, thank you to all the organizers and to everybody here tonight. It's an honor and privilege to be with you. Let me start off by saying how proud I am to have been brought up right here in this riding, and every aspect of who I am and is part of my upbringing in this riding. I would not have been here today, nor my success in my lifetime would not have been possible if it wasn't for the education system that I went through, which was public. And for many that know me, that it's J.G. Workman, R.H. King, and including the old Centennial College before it got closed down, and then moved on to Ryerson University. One of the things that's important to us all is public services. And having gone to university and having had to make some hard choices, including taking OSAP, we can all recognize that through the last 2 years of the pandemic, especially, how important those services are for all of us. So I'm so grateful for all those years and experiences spent in the public education, whether it been even at Albert Campbell Library, where I spent countless hours doing research papers or being involved in library programs. I also have to mention my family, who were entrepreneurs and small business owners right here in this riding. And for many that remember Peoples or Fur Valley, that would have been my family from the good old days, I call it. And so I wanted to acknowledge how important those lessons growing up from an entrepreneur family awarded me the lessons of hard work, and of course, even starting my own business in grade school, selling bubble gum and gift wrap. to everybody in all grades at that time at JJ Workman. But more importantly, I want to share with you a little bit of my background. My success has been attributed to not only this riding.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. I'm sure we can get into more of that during the conversation though. Thank you very much. And speaking of the conversation, let's get right into it. And our first formal question, it's about jobs. So for the three of you here, approximately 30% of workers in Ontario work in precarious jobs. Discrimination in the Ontario labor market, workers who are racialized, women, and recent immigrants must take on precarious work. This incentivizes employers to create bad jobs. If elected, how would you and your party prioritize equitable work legislation, policies, and practices to better protect all the workers in Ontario, regardless of these barriers? And we're going to go to Kara first, then Lisa, then Dolly.
All right, great. So we already have this great legislation in the books. It's called the Pay Transparency Act, but it's not implemented. And I think that would be a huge stepping stone to, it's proven statistically that like people get paid more equal when, people are watching the incomes they pay people. And basically just applying a gender-based analysis to all government legislation and programming, and just to be like, to advise our government, like how gender equality can be better achieved. There's the Anti-Racism Directorate, basically want to fully fund that and reversing the recent cuts that were made to it. And this is actually my favorite one. The Green Party wants to implement a gig workers' Bill of Rights because unfortunately, with temporary workers, with gig workers, they're more susceptible to dying on the job site, getting injured on the job site. And this is just inexcusable. In Canada, we have amazing labor laws. We just need to implement them. And so I think making a specific gig workers Bill of Rights would be a huge step in the right direction. I already said it. I'm from a labor union. Safety is a huge thing. That's why we restrict how many apprentices can be on a job site. And it's a temporary worker is kind of like an apprentice. They haven't been trained fully in that job, and it's just so important that every worker is not left behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Lisa, same question.
Thank you very much for the question. So we would bring back the common sense worker protection, which would ensure everyone is paid equally for the work they do, regardless of gender, employment status, or including part-time, casual, and temporary workers. That's one thing. And the second thing is bring back rules that give workers a minimum of 3 hours pay for being on call when they are not called in or work less than 3 hours. The third thing will help make it easier to organize and by join a private sector union through amendments to the Employment Standards Act and the Ontario Labour Relations Act, as well as provide 10 paid job-related sick days for all workers, the days that we can be used for major life experiences. And of course, I know many of us can attribute to this number, and I'll give you just an example to show you. Is just like in the early stages of the pandemic, my brother-in-law lost his father. He could only take 3 days of bereavement, which was to drive where no airports were open 6 hours to Sault Ste. Marie to say farewell to his father. So if you can imagine, those 10 paid sick days would do wonders for so many people. Increasing the minimum wage to $16 an hour effective January 2023 would help also more than 700,000 workers who were denied 3 years of increases in their wages. We'll also work to develop a living wage structure that factors in different wage rates in different regions of the province, and recognizing that some areas are more expensive to meet the basic than others. And lastly, I'm just going to add that we'll create a high quality, affordable benefits that will cover the cost of prescription drugs, dental care, vision care, mental health care. That way everyone can use, including self-employed. So we're talking about a lot of things that will also help on all levels. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Dolly.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that question. I think during the pandemic, we saw the big cracks that are within the entire sector for so many workers. And I've spoken in Parliament about the way we saw so many factory workers, industrial workers, even healthcare workers, PSWs, especially women, especially racialized folks who were in these contract jobs, agency work, multiple jobs, just trying to make ends meet, risking their lives, who were forced to work during the pandemic in unsafe conditions. And unfortunately, many of them lost their jobs even after being taken advantage of. And I've spoken about this in Parliament, trying to focus on some solutions as well. And this includes migrant workers too. We relied on so many migrant workers during the pandemic to have food on our table, and yet many of them caught COVID because they were stuck in rooms where multiple people were forced to stay in one room where there was no real safety precautions when it came to COVID-19. So this is why I want to speak up to the solutions that we have for the Ontario NDP. And that starts off with 10 paid sick days. This is something that I personally proposed in Parliament. Many of my colleagues proposed, and we are going to keep fighting and make sure that we have 10 paid sick days so that when someone's sick, they can stay home and they can take care of their family, or they can make sure that, if it's a PSW, we have our seniors, they're safe too. The other thing is all workers have at minimum a living wage. Third, fairness for gig workers. And I talked about many workers who have contract jobs, who do not have any benefits or rights. Why don't we have an Ontario benefits program so that they can actually have the benefits that they need? Support for small businesses. In order to achieve all the things that we just talked about, we need to support our small businesses as well, which means recovery grant for small businesses, commercial insurance support, rent support for them, and a Buy Ontario policy so that they're able to continue to do the business they do.
Okay. Thank you, Dolly. Thank you very much. And now let's move on to our next question on housing this time. Due to a massively unaffordable housing market and increasing proportion of residents in Toronto rent their home, wait lists for affordable housing are unimaginably long. Many of our newcomer and immigrant clients in Scarborough Southwest are forced to live in poor quality high-rise apartments. They face daily struggles with bed bugs and repairs, and most spend at least 50 to 60% of their income on rent. How do you intend to work with the municipalities to improve the quality and affordability of housing in Toronto and offer better protections for the tenants? We're going to go to Lisa first, then Dolly, and then Kara.
Funny enough, I had a feeling it was coming my way. But an Ontario Liberal government will adopt a holistic approach to solving the housing crisis. Firstly, we'll build 138,000 deeply afforded homes over the next decade by establishing an Ontario Home Building Corporation. Aside from building deeply affordable homes, this will also be exclusively to first-time buyers and other people along those lines. We will invest $360 million annually to help municipalities pay for the operations of social, supportive, and community homes. We'll also invest $100 million on housing first initiatives to end the chronic homelessness and to move people to shelter and supportive facilities on an urgent basis. We'll bring back rent control for all homes. We'll invest $100 million over 10 years to expand co-op housing. And we'll work with municipalities to drive zoning to reform and increase the supply of affordable homes, with the goal of building 1.5 million homes over the next 10 years, providing municipalities with more than $300 million over 5 years to accelerate the housing approvals and apply a vacant home tax on unoccupied residential properties. Just to want to add something, just due to my background being housing and having spent more than 13 years in the real estate space, and of course 5 years prior to that in the mortgage industry, and the last 7 years in organized real estate, I will tell you we are fully aware of the housing shortage. In fact, as a as a realtor and the past president of the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board, I can tell you we've spent the last 7 years informing government of the supply situation. And in fact, one of the things that I would like to work on, oh, I'm being cut. Thank you.
You have 15
Okay,
seconds.
all right. So just is working on programs that once existed that were good for us many years ago that don't make sense anymore. And that's like the RSP programs, the first time buyers. I've been heavily working with different groups around there. Thank you.
Now we got the red card. All right. Thank you, Lisa. Dolly. You're on mute, Dolly.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, Samir. Thank you, John. I will try my best to do it within the 2 minutes as well. You know, this is probably the most important issue that we're going to face of our time. And I hear it in my, every single day, almost every single week, there is one person that comes into the office to talk about it for the last 4 years. But I want to go back a little bit and say, when we immigrated to Canada, and one of the first places that I lived in was 390 Dawes Road. And my parents and I and my younger brother, we moved into 390 Dawes Road, which is all we could afford. And many immigrant families move, to an apartment like that. And I saw the way people struggle and work hard to make sure that they can continue to move up and to be able to get out of the cycle that you fall under, especially if you're trying to make ends meet and you don't have you don't have a lot of ability to have that income. There are quite a few solutions that I want to highlight because it's so important. And that includes co-op housing, that includes working with the Canadian Co-op Federation, as well as focusing on programs where we are actually focusing on Ontario Nonprofit Housing Association as well. And we have done consultation to do this. If I run out, I want for you to be able to go out to homes you can afford online, because it's a long list and I may not be able to cover it. A few things that I want to include is building 1.5 million homes over the next decade. Also focusing on exclusionary zoning, as well as saving 311,000 households on average of $300 for rent. The other thing is making sure that we're repairing the housing market. And I have a long list and I won't be able to get into it because I'm seeing my own time now. So I want to highlight one thing, which is fixing the system within. So I'm highlighting long-term solutions, but there is also immediate solutions that we can take, which is talking about the way we have our housing. One of the problems that I heard from a veteran, for example, who died from anemia after he had bed bugs in his home, in his social housing home, that we solved in our constituency office, and we were trying to solve and we worked with. It was so difficult to see what we faced.
Okay, Dolly.
And the reality of so many people in it's impossible
thank you, Dolly.
to do it, John, in 2 minutes.
Sorry, I don't control the 2 minutes, Dolly. Thank you, though. Kara, please.
All right. So, I mean, it sounds like we're all just trying to fix the system that's broken. And I think we can start with really subtle things like implementing vacancy controls to limit rent increases. It's just, there's nothing stopping them from, hiking it up if you move out. And that's the problem, this buildup of hiked rental prices. And another thing is these renovations. You can live somewhere and they decide to renovate the lobby, forget about your unit, and, and all of a sudden they're putting up your rent exorbitantly. So I think the Green Party is going to, try to tamp down on those things. Reinstate rent controls on all units to regulate rental increases. And we also really want to work with nonprofit housing providers and give them the support and access that they need to purchase rental buildings, because this for-profit system is not working. We also would like to invest $800 million each year for 10 years to build over 100,000 permanently affordable community housing rental homes. We need to update and strengthen sections of the Residential Tenancies Act so that basically deal with this state of repair from multi-unit buildings to ensure tenants have homes that are safe. And another thing is we need to fund the landlord and tenant board. That these waiting 6 months to find out if you're evicted is just not okay. They need more support. They need more people working there, and yeah, that's basically it. I mean, we have a long list of things that we want to do as well, but it all just comes down to like helping the lower income people, just have places they can live. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, all three of you. Now we're going to go move on to food security. The number of people accessing our food banks and other food security initiatives have increased dramatically throughout COVID-19. Many are looking for new and innovative ways to address food security, such as repurposing land into community gardens to grow their own fruits and vegetables. If elected, how do you plan to make land and green space more accessible for people across the city who need to be able to feed themselves and their families? We'll go to Dolly first, then Kara, then Lisa.
Thanks, John. First, let me start off by thanking some of the local organizations that have been doing some amazing work throughout the pandemic to help people with food security. And that includes community gardeners at Cherry Drive, for example, or the agricultural groups that I just visited just a few weeks ago, the backyard gardening groups, or the community food banks. We have two amazing food banks, including the the Bluffs Food Bank, as well as Feed Scarborough, and they have been doing amazing work, and we have seen how long the lineups have gotten over the last 2 years, more than ever before. So when we talk about food security and the rate of poverty in our riding, I think it's also important to remember the fact that we have one of our neighborhoods has one of the highest child poverties in the city. And this is something that has been going on for a long time. And I think that comes back to the failures we've had in our governments for last decades to address poverty, address housing issues that we were talking about before, or food security in general and affordability. There are a few things that we could do to be able to support families. And our plan includes working with municipalities to make sure that we create green spaces. And that also works on the idea of environment, housing, and affordability all together, as well as job creation. When we have a provincial food strategy, and something that I think Meal Exchange and other organizations like Daily Food Bank that actually came together to actually tell the Ontario NDP, here is what you need to do. You need to have a provincial food strategy. And that is what we have, which looks at healthy, locally sourced food so that people are able to eat something that's healthy. The other thing is to make sure that we help local families to be able to grow within their, in their own neighborhoods. And I know that a lot of community members actually reach out to me to work with municipalities so they have local spaces like the hydro corridors, for example. We can make sure the Meadowway or all of those spaces that can become a space for growing vegetables or for local green space. And that is very important for us as well. I'll end stop here. Thanks so much.
Okay, next, sorry, Kara.
Awesome. So thank you for this question. It's definitely near and dear to our hearts, especially with the amount of Ontario farmland that's getting paved over. So it's really important that we focus on, local food, nutritious food. And so I think the pandemic's really highlighted, our serious vulnerability. And, we need to focus on growing more in Ontario. My grandparents were farmers, potato farmers from PEI. And as much, and even those farms are disappearing. And that was one of the biggest industries there. So, but within our own smaller city communities, the Green Party really wants to focus on funding community-owned healthy food markets and community gardens. Another initiative is rooftop growing spaces, especially in urban food deserts. And, food has become so corporatized, but what we need to do is just food going in the landfill is just not an option. There has to be a way that we can work out so that, people who need it can get this food first, and then perhaps animals, and then we'll work from there. But it's just, the food in landfills is just, we need a new system, whether that's supporting grocery stores, instead of them throwing out their food that doesn't look perfect, or encouraging stores to have kind of a bruised and dented section or what have you. But there has to be a way to stop as much food waste. But I think that covers what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. I just also want to say thanks to Kara. Thank you your parents for me. Potatoes are my favorite food. So I've been a vegetarian since I was a kid. So it's always been the one vegetable that's filled me up. So thank them for, please. In terms of the Ontario Liberal government, we are looking at a number of different initiatives. I mean, firstly, removing the provincial portion of the HST from prepared meals of $20 or less. And I don't know if everyone remembers when that was done for under like $4 or $5. And the reality is, what could you buy for $4 or $5? Nothing. So $20 individually with the portion of the HST. And then of course, the reinstatement of the universal basic income pilot project would be an addition that would help. And we also are talking about stopping some of the urban sprawl to protect farmland by bringing back urban intensification requirements and making Ontario's food supply chain more resilient by investing in additional regional processing capacity. Reviewing some of the potential restrictions on foreign ownership of farmland are some of the key priorities. And even taking in account, and Dolly had mentioned it, and I want to thank her for that too, is even locally here, you know, Feed Scarborough, working with groups like this, perhaps bringing legislation to ensure government is focused on food insecurity and food waste, and tie it into local environmental groups, working to build more pollinator gardens and expanding on ever-growing cycling networking, and that will draw in more cyclists into the community also. So the initiatives like this are so critical, and that's it from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just for a second, I'm going to just say hello to anybody who joined us a little late in the program, just to know who we're talking to here. We are talking to 3 candidates from the Scarborough Southwest riding. We're talking to Lisa Patel from the Liberal Party, Kara Bordeaux from the Green Party, and Dolly Beacom from the NDP Party. The candidate Brett Snyder from the PC Party was also invited, but he declined the invitation. Please listen now. We have a couple more formal questions, and then we're going to get to the questions from the audience. So if you do have a question, down at the bottom of your screen there's a Q&A spot where you can put your question into the box. I also just want to say something too. My screen's a little bit different than everyone else's. There's a lot of great ideas here, and when one of the candidates is speaking, what's great and interesting is the other two are often nodding their head in agreement. So you don't get to see that at home, but there are some things that they do agree on here, and I just want to let everyone at home know about that. Okay, now we're going to get on with the environment. Climate change. Climate change is deemed a priority in the province of Ontario by the constituency. Central to how the provincial government addresses climate change is equity. Where does equity stand for your party? What will your government do to put equity into action? And how should your constituents hold you accountable as an MPP? We'll go with Kara first, then Lisa, then Dolly.
Great, thanks for that question, John. So, you know, climate action is job action. It's about shifting, you know, our existing systems and supporting those people that are having to shift with it. So the Green Party would love to cover the tuition costs for skilled trades and clean energy jobs to launch a massive green workforce. You know, we also really want to show support for strong green businesses. We're going to focus at least 25% of the overall benefits of public investments to reduce climate pollution in disadvantaged communities. And this is going to come from a 1% climate surcharge levy on the province's top 10% income earners. We'd like to focus on subsidies on retrofits that reduce energy use for those you know, unduly affected by the cost of energy. You know, conduct a transition census of vulnerable jobs and economic sectors to develop strategies that help workers and businesses adapt to a new climate economy, which is really important, because I think Canada's overall resistance to going green is the jobs, and there's options for people and we'd love to help them see those. But yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you. Lisa.
Thank you very much. The first initiative from the Ontario Liberal Party would be cutting greenhouse gases emissions by 50% below 2005 levels by 2030. We are also slash all public transit fares across the province to $1 until January 2024, and this would be taking 400,000 cars trips off the road and reducing pollution and congestion. So that's a major one. We also will designate 30% of land as protected areas by 2030 up to from 10% and take equivalent of 500,000 cars off the road by planting 800 million new trees over the next 8 years. And finally, in addition, we'll also expand the green belt by creating 5 new provincial parks. So those are some of the initiatives here. There's still a lot more work to be done, and that we're going to be continuing to hear from all of you as we enhance that.
Thank you very much. Dolly?
Thanks so much, John. This question, when I read the question, it automatically made me think of the lack of action we have had over the previous years, which is where we are today. And for me, this is a little personal because when I think about the next 10, 20, 30 years, and I was born in Bangladesh, so I have a lot of my family that still live in Bangladesh, the impact of climate change means that almost the entire country will be underwater and they won't have homes anymore. And this is the reality for some people when we talk about climate change and the impact of so many governments that just made promises but did not act on it. So for us, for New Democrats, we have a plan that is ambitious because we need an ambitious plan, and that's called the Green New Democratic Deal. And we came up with it much before the election because we knew that we had to do something to make sure we're focusing on real action against climate change. So I want to highlight a few things, and that includes creating green jobs, which is through the process of some of the activities we have for our Green New Democratic Deal. And it is fully costed. This is a standalone costed plan that tackles climate crisis. So if you want to check it out, please search Green New Democratic Deal, and it has all the details along with the costing as well. Another point to this is achieving net zero emissions by 2050. So we'll reduce Ontario's greenhouse gas emissions by at least 50%, which is below the 2005 levels. Another next is creating an ambitious building retrofit program, something that I heard from Scarborough Southwest residents as well, which will also create jobs. We'll also expand the green belt, and the details of that is in the plan as well. We'll also expand access to parks and green spaces across Ontario while increasing protection for ecosystem and biodiversity. We also want to support Toronto's urban tree canopy, as well as creating a youth climate corp, which helps young people get involved in this initiative as well. We will also not build Highway 413, which is very important. And
thank you,
check out
Dolly.
the plan. Thanks so much. Thanks, John.
Okay, our next question here is on transportation. So, in Scarborough, when the RT closes, Scarborough residents will be taking replacement buses for at least 7 years. Essential workers, racialized and working class people rely on buses every day and need more frequent, reliable service. More service is the best way to increase ridership and tackle climate change. If elected, how much transit operations funding will you provide to the TTC so that they can run more service in Scarborough? Lisa, you're first, then Dolly, then Kara.
Thank you very much, John. So I think a lot of these questions overlap a little bit, but I had mentioned it in my previous one, and that is reducing transit fare to $1 a ride. So $1 a ride and $40 a monthly pass until 2024 across all transit agencies in the entire province will provide transit agencies with $1.8 billion to compensate for fare reduction. That's just one initiative. We'll work with all transit agencies, municipal and GO, Metrolinx provincially, to advance fare integration so that people don't need to pay the double fare when they leave the border of Toronto. And we'll also invest $375 million a year to help cover the operational cost of public transit agencies and to allow them to maintain reliable, expanded, and frequent service. We have an agreement to support and fund Eglinton East LRT along with the Durham Scarborough BRT, and complete the construction of the Scarborough Extension subway. And lastly, we're also going to work with the TTC to choose the most appropriate service options when SRT gets shut down, and fair allocations of funds and resources to provide commuters with more reliable and frequent service. And those are some of the high-level initiatives at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Dolly, same question.
Thanks so much, John. TTC, so actually I was really proud to sign the pledge by TTC riders just the other day. And when speaking to them, I was sharing a story about how one of the, a constituent who reached out about the removal of a bus stop near Midland and St. Clair that just took place some time ago, not too long ago. And the fact that this person and so many of her neighbors all have to walk for extra 3 to 5 minutes now to get to a bus stop. That is the reality of so many failed programmings where people do not have enough service. There's huge barriers to transit in Scarborough because Scarborough gets left behind when there is investment for any sort of things like transit or healthcare. And some of the biggest issues include inefficient bus routes, unreliable bus times. And one of the biggest causes that's been highlighted is the fact that we have things like mechanical failures that takes place for buses that are allocated for Scarborough, because we always get, sort of the hand-me-downs things when it comes to trains or buses. So let's make sure that we have enough funding for Scarborough. And that starts with also having the 50% operating funding, the provincial operating funding that we need to restore for Ontario so that there are enough buses and bus stops and frequent buses coming to pick people up and get them moving from one location to another. We also need to have 10-minute service guarantee, something that the Ontario NDP plans to do, as well as increasing the number of buses on busy routes to reduce crowding. We also want to integrate both transit as well as TTC to make sure that people have better service and the ability to just get from one location to another, whether they're going away from Scarborough or within Scarborough. But I also want to give some specific solutions for Scarborough, which includes supporting the Scarborough's transit needs, especially when it comes to Scarborough's Line 2 subway extension build. And I see the time's almost up. We also want to look at the priority rapid transit projects as well. I know that the decommissioned Scarborough RT corridor until the subway is built is now going to have bus routes, and we want to make sure that there are people who are able to have the service so that they can go from one location to another.
Thank you, Dolly. Thank you. Kara.
Thanks so much. So to directly answer your question, just like the NDP, we want to upload 50% of the costs for transit systems back to the province because we have to support our municipalities when it comes to this. But what I've been reading a lot about is the Scarborough Rapid Transit shuttle. We have a dedicated lane so that, it's saying my internet's unstable. Just let me know if I need to repeat something. But yeah, all I'm getting at is that we need a dedicated bus lane for that shuttle route because these people are used to taking the light rapid transit. And if they all automatically have to add like 15, 20 minutes onto their route for 7 years, that's just unacceptable. And then I hope, other solutions come to light as well. The Green Party, we want to electrify Ontario's transit system as quickly as possible. Add 4,000 electric and fuel cell buses by 2030. Add more dedicated bus lanes. They work, especially during rush hour. Like transit, it's not difficult. And we are going to cut public transit fares in half for 3 months to help people avoid the soaring cost of gas. But I don't think, cutting the price permanently is going to work. People don't ever complain about cheaper transit. Like, of course, they want to pay less, but they want it to be better. They want it to be clean. They want it to be convenient. They want it to be frequent, fast and safe. And we need funding for all that from everybody. And we just need to connect communities. And, we want to fix the transit systems all over Ontario, not just Scarborough Southwest, but especially Scarborough Southwest. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Now we have one more formal question, and then we will get into our questions from the audience. So just a reminder again, audience, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Okay, so now our next question, our last formal question, is on health. COVID-19 pandemic has called greater attention to many sources of stress in Ontario's healthcare system, such as understaffing, a lack of culturally relevant services, unaffordable mental health resources, and long wait times. These challenges will be exacerbated by climate change, driving an increase in heat-related conditions and respiratory infectious disease. If elected, how will you and your party work to make healthcare more accessible for all Ontarians while reducing the burden on our healthcare workers? Dolly, you're first, then Kara, then Lisa.
Thanks so much, John. And I want to say thank you for pointing out that we're talking about understaffing, lack of culturally relevant services, and affordable mental health care. We also have a commitment to make sure that we include mental health within OHIP, as well as dental coverage and pharma care, and the impact of climate change and what it means for so many people, because we know that there's another pandemic that's already here, and that is climate crisis. We need to also add to this list is the backlog of so many surgeries, so many people who have been waiting for years now, that has been added on because of the pandemic. And I hear from so many of the constituents about that as well. I also want to highlight that there's a lot of people who have had COVID and they don't know the impact for long COVID or what it means for them as they face many health issues, as well as an infrastructure need for emergency services, emergency rooms. So I'll specifically focus on Scarborough, for example. What we need to do is make sure that we really fulfill what Scarborough Health Network has been asking for. They have a perfectly fine proposal. They have come together and put a proposal together, which includes completing the infrastructure projects in the Scarborough hospitals. And that means the Centenary Hospital, as well as the Birchmount hospitals, get the repair that they need to have done, especially expanding our ER, the emergency space. We also need to hire and retain healthcare workers to increase the capacity. Something that I have worked very hard on is Bill 98, which is to have internationally trained professionals who come from around the world with years of skills and education and do not have the ability to work in this province, especially when they have, for example, healthcare workers, many of them doctors, nurses, PSWs, who come here during the pandemic, came forward and said, well, you know what, then I'll volunteer. But the fact that they were not able to contribute the way they wanted to. So check out Bill 98 because it finally pushed through healthcare workers to be able to contribute in the field that they want to. We also want to repeal Bill 124 so that it allows, which was an insult to so many healthcare workers. We also want to commit to hiring 10,000 PSWs and 30,000 nurses, as well as increasing the PSW wages.
Thank you, Dolly. Okay, so same question now to Kara.
Awesome. So I'd love to echo Dolly. Immediately, the Green Party would kill Bill 124 and the problematic sections of Bill 106. We need to allow healthcare workers to collectively bargain for better wages. It's like, how dare we call them heroes and then say they don't deserve more money? It's just ridiculous. We would like to make a $35 an hour minimum wage for registered nurses, and then a $25 an hour minimum wage for personal support workers. Also establishing a nurse-led task force to make recommendations on matters related to the recruitment, retention, and safety of nurses. One thing, I don't know that we invest as much as we should, but is prevention. That's how it's going to help our healthcare system as well. So working with the federal government for universal dental care, universal pharma care would make a huge difference. And of course, improve the environmental determinants of health by prioritizing clean air, clean water, and access to healthy local food in all communities. The Green Party also wants to make huge investments in mental health and increase their investment enough so that it ends up being 10% of Ontario's healthcare budget. Students and young people waiting so long to see therapists, see counselors is just unacceptable. Increase options for primary care. using community centers and also nurse practitioner-led clinics so that people can have like non-emergent care for 24/7. But there's a lot more things I can mention, but that's basically my favorite things from our health platform. Thanks.
Thank you, Kara. Lisa.
Thank you, John. And I just have to say, you were right. I've been nodding away a lot of this because I think the Ontario Liberal Party has some pieces from both of the Green and the NDP. So here's what goes our synopsis. So first off, we will hire 100,000 new healthcare professionals over the next 6 years. We're going to also get internationally trained nurses, physicians, and other health professionals working in Ontario by replacing the unnecessary requirements for the Canadian experience and creating a competency-based assessment and bridge the training. And that's going to be a critical piece, especially as we watch immigration continue to grow. And this is going to also help turn around a lot more professions. And I can tell you, witnessing like people over the years that were dentists coming from another country and not having been able to qualify and attempting the exam several times, but yet they qualify at home. So that's just one example. To meet the demands of mental health, we're also going to train 3,000 new mental health and addiction professionals. And over 250,000 Ontarians have been waiting for much needed surgeries. And of course, we are committed to clearing the backlog and with $1 billion investment in additional capacity. We're also focusing on access to primary care within 24 hours by increasing the number of family doctors and nurse practitioners across Ontario. And we'll also create 15 new community health centers across the province, accelerate the creation of more than 3,000 new modern hospital beds across the province and over the next decade. And of course, Ontario Liberals will commit to $1.9 billion to funding and redevelop and improve the Birchmount and Centenary. And of course, I just wanted to add, we will also repeal the Bill 124.
Thank you, Lisa. And thank you very much for all of you, to all of you for answering those questions. Those were the formal questions. We're going to get into some questions from the audience in just a moment. As a matter of fact, we've been getting quite a few of them. I know audience-wise, we still have well over 100 people, which is great for this sort of thing. But before we do, I understand Lisa does have to leave at 8 o'clock. I'm hoping Kara and Dolly, you can stick around and answer some of the audience questions. But just so what we can do right now is just give Lisa her 2 minutes in closing and maybe to wrap up and say anything else you want to say to the people of Scarborough Southwest. Go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you, John. So I want to share with you a principle that I love. It's by Sanjay Nath, and that's 10-10-80. So 10% of naysayers, 10%, there's 10% of the yay-sayers, the yeses, and then you've got 80% which do not, are the in between and don't know what to think or do. And so I'm urging you, as we are all together today, the advanced polls are in front of us. So don't be that 80% of the population of not sure I want to do it or what to do. Rather be the 10% of the yay sayers. Go out there, get to those polls, vote, then and be part of this process. That's the only way we're going to get to that next phase of where we want to, is us all being involved and making our democratic right. I also want to share with you that I've had many conversations at doors. And of course, there's a point of intersection, despite our differences. And the most important thing is, out of all of this, is public services. And one is, and how essential they really are. And as I've mentioned in my opening, through the pandemic, if there's one thing we've learned, is how much more essential these are. And so we can't take those for granted. And if you would love more information, please reach out to my office. We and my team, we would love to speak to you. And from my heart, thank you so much for having me today. And on June 2nd, or in the advance polls, please vote, and I thank you so much for your consideration, support, and vote.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you for joining us this evening. Now we are going to get to some audience questions. And the first one, I'll tell you right now. And bear with me as I go read it. I'm reading it now the same time you guys are hearing it. Equity is needed in our education system. There are schools in Scarborough's there are schools in Scarborough's less advantaged communities that do not have the same access to services and learning materials. If elected, how will you bring equity into our educational system? Kara, you're first. Dolly and Lisa, if you're sticking around, you can certainly answer the question if you're still here. All right, thanks. Kara?
So I think, actually, do you mind repeating the question one more time? Because I forget the last statement.
Absolutely. Well, so it was about the schools and how some are certainly have more challenges than others. And sorry, we just moved to here. If you elected, how will you bring more equity to our educational system?
Right. So basically just working with school boards, like with retention to the staff and making sure that, you know, like you can't be what you can't see. So like in the communities that are, you know, like primarily Farsi speaking or what have you, that they have people in the schools to be able to communicate with their students and just like making sure curriculums are up to date, that like we really can't, I find like we're really behind in updating the things that we're teaching our kids. But in terms of like making it equal for schools, I don't know. Like it boggles my mind that this is an issue because we have this funded system that is supposed to be equal, and yet we have these schools that go without. And so I think a lot of that seems to be like budgetary, you know, we need to upgrade certain like the buildings, making sure that, you know, if like I come from the trades, like making sure that like those vocational schools have what they need to teach their students so that they can move on and you know, use what they learn in their careers. But it's something I'm going to look more into for sure.
Thank you. Dolly?
Thanks so much, John. I think we have to really look back and look at the decades-long backlog in funding for our schools, for our education system. The reason we have over $16 billion of repair backlog that we are facing right now is because we forgot about school. We forgot about the quality of learning that we need in our province. A lot of our schools are crumbling. I know that one of our schools in this riding, the repair cost is much higher than rebuilding an entire new school. And we highlighted this when we actually, you know, when Andrea Horvath came to the riding and we talked about it and we asked the ministry to invest in our education system. So there's a few things that we need to do. And we need to make sure that we do not lose, first of all, especially in communities where we have to be, and we're talking about equity, access to schools is so important. From the previous Liberal government, there was more than 200 schools that were closed. During the Conservative government, we have seen cuts to our education system, which resulted in deteriorating learning experience, and especially the push to online learning, which we should never have, and the push towards privatizing our education system. So it's really important that we ensure we have class sizes that are smaller, that allows kids to have the attention they need from our educators. We'll cap class sizes for grades 4 to grade 8, as well as hire 20,000 teachers and education workers, additional to mental health workers and child and youth workers. We also need to commit to the $16 billion of the infrastructure deficit that we're facing right now, as well as fixing the rules so that we're working closely with the school boards and do a much better job, not just in rebuilding the structure, but the quality of education. We also want to remove EQAO, something that we heard from students, parents, and educators, that the standardized examination system does not work. And we need to really strongly oppose any privatization or any effort that moves to privatization of our public education system. Thank you, Justin.
Okay, thank you, Dolly. Lisa.
Thank you. So this will be my last question, but if anyone does have questions, please reach out to us. We would be happy to connect. So to this question, first off, I want to share that, you know what, I had an amazing upbringing right here in Scarborough Southwest. I tribute my life to the education system. I'm a protege of the public school system, from elementary school to high school to college to university. So I'm going to say I had one of the best upbringings when I look back over the 80s, the 90s, and 2000. And so I say so it saddens me where education has gone, especially now seeing where they are today. And as an auntie to 3 little ones, 2, 6, and 8, I live vicariously through them. And as even through the pandemic, which my opponents have highlighted too, that in the case, like, I had to question my nephews, my 5-year-old, now when he was 5, now he's 6, but when he was 5 and he was in the pandemic, and I was like, Nate, why aren't you online? He's like, there's no class. And literally we went online and they're like, hi, Nate. And then it disappeared. And so he has lost so much in that time frame. And I can't tell you, the minute that happened, I said, okay, Nate, I'm going to teach you. And we actually sat down and spent the rest of the day together, learning all kinds of things. And it saddens me. It breaks my heart to know that is what the education system is, or what they're learning today, and where I was at their time and their age. So of course, in terms of education, the Ontario Liberal government is completely committed that students across this province have been dealt with in an unfair manner. So we are going to do everything possible in terms of education, like reinstate the option of grade 13, hire 10,000 more teachers, offer classes on mental health, financial literacy, taxes, and more, and create high quality online options for high school students, support learning French and other languages, hire 1,000 more mental health workers for students and staff.
Okay.
And
sorry, Lisa, thank you very much for all of that. And again, you're welcome to stay on, but I know you have to go, and thank you for joining us this evening. Now I'm going to move on to my next audience question. This question goes like this. I am a constituent and a paramedic serving the community for 14 years. The province funds 50% of the cost for paramedic services. Currently, we are in a state of crisis with paramedics working 12 to 14 hours a shift without lunch break due to the workload. This is a dangerous situation as we must make life-saving decisions while still dealing with a pandemic. What will you do to improve the working conditions of paramedics and help protect our community? Dolly, you're first, then Kara.
Thanks so much, John. I actually get to spend a lot of time with a paramedic who is volunteering with us and teaches me a lot about what we need to do to make sure that we have safer work conditions for them, and for especially respecting the work that they do in our community. I also know that during the pandemic, they faced one of the most difficult situations, being on the front lines, working day and night to save lives, and sometimes did not have the ability to take time off, did not have the ability to stay safe, and did an incredible job being on the front lines. So we need to do a lot more to support paramedics and support all public service workers, which is why it's really important that we have safe working conditions. One of the things that I was happy to support my colleagues is bills that make sure that when we have training, for example, that allows them to be safe. The other thing that we need to make sure that, and I think you actually answered the question, or the person who asked the question talked about it in the question itself, to talk about improving working conditions. That includes training, that includes making sure that they have enough support, whether we're talking about WSIB, whether we're talking about mental health support, pay and benefits, all of that encompasses the type of work that they have and the quality of job they have. I think it's also important to recognize that a lot of these workers, especially including paramedics, when we have WSIB, and I believe it was $1.5 billion that was given back to from WSIB to employers, which should have gone to public services and which should have gone to employees like paramedics who are suffering after a really difficult time in our province. So it's important to make sure that we're supporting them in every way possible, especially after this pandemic, when these are the people who are on the front line, front and center, without the ability to take time off and risking their lives to make sure that everyone else in this province we're safe. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Kara. You're on mute.
Still on me. Okay. I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for serving our communities this way. It is a thankless job. I think in the media you see like police, you see firefighters, but you forget about paramedics and how important they are. And my uncle's he was a paramedic, and the mental health issues are just astronomical because you guys end up going to scenes of every sorts. And I really think mental health support is a huge part of, the things that we need to give paramedics. We need to train your bosses to recognize the signs. And, that doesn't help with your lunch break, of course. Obviously, we need to hire more people. We need to have more ambulances. I heard a statistic that must be wrong, but I heard that we had under 200 ambulances in Toronto, and I really hope that's wrong, because for a city this size, we need emergency services to be accessible. And it just sounds like we need to hire more, and we need your bosses to understand what it is that you're going through out there, so that they can support you in the way you deserve. Because we need you, and it's so important, that you guys are making these split decisions, like you say, and you need to be fresh. You can't be sleep deprived. You can't be, hungry. It's just, those are basic human necessities. And I hope going forward that the next government will be able to support you better that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Okay, the next question, and Kara, you're going to be first this time. There are bungalows on St. Clair and Pharmacy within walking distance to Warden Station that developers are demolishing and building monster homes. These are expensive and only provide for single families. Attempts to build triplex or quad complexes are not allowed, even though these units would be less expensive individually, enable more neighbors to live here. What will your government do to end exclusionary zoning? Kara, and then Dolly.
Well, we really want to work with municipalities to not let things like this happen. I'm in construction. This means more jobs for us, but it still breaks my heart whenever I see perfectly good buildings, perfectly good homes being demolished just to build these kind of like mini mansions. Yeah, I just think we need to work with municipalities so that triplexes and quad complexes are allowed, because we can make them beautiful. I don't know what it is, like, I don't know if this is like old policy that we just haven't updated, but you can make these things beautiful. They don't have to, impede people's view. I'm not sure what other things homeowners worry about. I'm a renter. But I just think that it really comes down to working with the municipalities to make these plans to allow, multifamily units. Thanks.
Thank you. Dolly?
Thanks so much for that question, because it touches upon a lot of the issues that we're facing with the housing system and the housing market, and the need for affordable homes across Scarborough, across this province. I think it comes back to one of the key issues that we face, which is respecting the community and consultation. We have to make sure that people in the community are consulted, they're heard whenever any development, any permits given. And we need to, as it's a provincial entity, we need to work with municipalities to make sure that that's done carefully. Ensuring communities have a say is so very important, whether it's a large infrastructure project, or whether it's metro links, or whether it's a house being built or renovated. All of this, there needs to be enough say, community say. The other thing is making sure that we have responsible development within the existing urban boundaries. We know that, for example, we have a lot of lands that are sitting empty, and they have development permits that have been given out. And when we talk about the housing prices, for example, those are not being built on. These are empty land where if we had more supplies, we would be able to have, a market where people are able to afford homes and have more options to buy from. At the end of the day, one of the things that we're facing in Scarborough Southwest is that there's a lot of young families, a lot of working families that one day hope to, and I know Kara does too, one day hopes to buy their own home. You want to be able to have that. And to be able to do that, you need to make sure that it's affordable. It's almost impossible right now to even think about that, to envision that, and that is coming back to how do we make that affordable. While I say this, it's also important that we have environmental assessment. We have, protection of our land, protection of our green space, protection of our heritage, and making sure that the natural heritage is, all of that is taken into consideration, and the conservation authorities and folks like that have the ability to have a stronger say so that they are not undermined by governments with things like MZOs, something that we saw with the current government, with the previous government, for example. So there is a balancing act as well.
Thank you, Dolly. Thank you, Dolly. Next question. As a young person, very concerned about the environment, a lot of politicians say nice things when it comes to climate, but fail to follow through with action. How will you be different? Dolly first, then Kara.
Sorry, I couldn't hear your question.
Sorry. As a young person, very concerned about the environment, a lot of politicians say nice things when it comes to the climate, but fail to follow through with action. How will you be different?
We will act. I think that's the main concern that we face. We have governments, and I know we all know that we haven't had an Ontario NDP government in about 30 years. It's almost as old as I am. If we had an Ontario government that is NDP, we would have seen real action. And I know that with many of my colleagues, like Peter Tabbins, for example, like Joel Harden, we have worked on issues or Ian Arthur, where we focus on real action, where it's not just about big promises, but having solutions that we heard from local community members. One of the things you saw in our community in Scarborough Southwest, as I did as a local MPP, was to come up with our own Scarborough Southwest environmental group. And I made sure that it was non-partisan. So it wasn't about the NDP or a particular political stripe. It was that, why don't, as your local MPP, why don't I get people who are really concerned about the environment, who are concerned about climate change, come together and give their local member of provincial parliament the advice and the feedback that they need to hear, and take that to parliament. And that was extremely important. As a sort of young person myself, I think that's very important that we also have young people have their say as well. We were really proud to see people of all different stripes, all different walks of life join Scarborough Southwest Environmental Group and have two different approaches actually. So one was local. So when we talk about cleanups, when we talk about local initiatives or the pollinator gardens, for example. But the other thing was, how do we make sure that we have policies that their MPP can come forward in Parliament and really propose in Parliament? And one of the things I kept asking was, give me your feedback, whether we're talking about rebates, whether we're talking about electric vehicle, whether we're talking about electricity. Something that I was involved with before becoming an MPP was the Ontario hydro system and the sell-off of our electricity system and privatizing that. All of that is part of the bigger environmental plan that we need to focus on, and having people, local peoples, keep their MPPs and all levels of politicians accountable is so very important, and making sure that their local representatives are listening to them and those concerns are heard in Parliament.
Thank you. Thank you. Kara.
So I'm not sure what to say. I think climate sounds really nice on platforms, but I mean, as you can imagine, our party really, really, really looks at everything they decide through environmental lens. And I don't know how I'll be different, but I would definitely try, because the thing is, I really truly believe that the future can be green, and we can still maintain our kind of status quo when it comes to like jobs and our lifestyle. We don't have to suffer, for making our world a better place to live in. But the Green Party has a ton of things on their platform. I don't really like spouting numbers. I don't think that gets through to people. I don't understand, greenhouse gas science. Like, I mean, I get it. I understand what it is, but if you give me a bunch of numbers, I'm not going to know the difference. So all I'm saying for us is, like, we want to protect biodiversity. We want to, strengthen animal welfare rules, and, really protect our natural spaces, protect our water. All this is really important. And, Mike Schreiner has worked in his community. He is an elected Green, and he has worked with the Indigenous communities that surround Guelph, and has made, made his impact on that. And, yeah, I just think that nobody can tell what the future will hold, but all I know is the Green Party is committed to, is just everything green. We like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kara. We're getting lots of questions in, and a diverse type of questions. So this is great. So the next one is, I keep getting replies from potential employers that they are looking for someone to grow with the company, which is another way of saying you are too old. What will each of you do to assist older workers, which by definition are 55 plus, enter employment without discrimination? I think, Kara, you're first.
That's something I've heard of before. It doesn't really come up much, but I think in our society, we have this, like, there's an age, and then you're supposed to stop working after that age. And this idea that, 55 is too old to hire somebody, like, companies, like, use and abuse us anyways. I don't understand why, why they feel that, like, a 55-year-old would not give them value. What about all that knowledge they've accumulated? Things have changed over time. Like, my mom was a computer programmer, got educated in the 80s. Obviously, her industry has changed. But I had a friend whose wife got hired, and they had asked why, like, they had asked the hiring agency why they had been off work, and they said, oh, they just had a kid, but they're in their 50s. And so as soon as they went in for the interview, they realized that, like, they kind of had to get tricked into interviewing this person. And I just don't think that that is a viable way of working. So I think it kind of comes down to education. And I think we need to educate different companies about, about that this is even happening. Like, we've done that with a lot of things, and I don't think this is any different. So, hopefully when companies are aware that then they will focus on, like, remedying this situation. And I mean, I'm open to suggestions for whoever asked this question, if you can think of solutions, because it sucks. It's the same with new Canadians too. They don't get hired for good quality jobs either. It's like, everybody has something to give. But yeah, I hope good luck with your job search. Thank you.
Dolly.
Thanks so much, John. That's a really good question, I have to say, because I think one of the things that I hear at the doors now most is people who feel like their voice is not heard. They work hard, they try their best, they pay their taxes, they do their dues, and they pay their dues, and yet they don't feel the respect, the care that and don't make enough, frankly, to be able to afford a life here in Scarborough or in this province. And I want to touch on one of the things that Kara actually talked about, which is many of them are new immigrants. Many of them are immigrants, from various different different parts of the world, but people who have come here with skills and experience and have so much to offer, but do not get recognized for it. And this is something that we face all the time. And one of the reasons why I brought forward the bill to recognize internationally trained professionals, not just in healthcare sector, which is a big emphasis as well, but in all sector. And we were able to successfully push the government to recognize this and actually bring a bill that has a specific section for all regulatory bodies so that there are barriers that they face are removed. This is something that we have heard for many, many years. And a lot of these people are, in that sort of generation where I think it goes beyond education. They actually have the education, they actually have the skills. They're not respected for it. They're not qualified, they're not recognized for their qualification. And it's about time that we as a government say, well, why don't we allow for these people to show their skills? If there is something that needs to be renewed or you need to rehash something, why don't we give them this ability? And let's make sure there is no cost to it. Or they can afford the cost to it, because right now it's almost impossible, especially when you're facing a situation where you're told that you need to, that you'll be fired because there is AI, for example. One of the factories that fired a significant amount of workers, especially racialized women, because one of the reasons they highlighted was because everything's going to be machine. We don't need that many workers, and therefore you are going to lose your job, which is just so unfortunate. And I remember many of the workers telling me, well, now I'm in my 50s. How am I going to go get a job?
Okay. Thank you, Dolly. Next question, a little bit about employment, but also about I guess our housing and just the overall landscape of Scarborough Southwest. Some of the employment lands in our riding are being reviewed for residential housing. How can we prevent this from happening? Small businesses like arborists and landscapers, not retail, are having difficulty staying in Scarborough Southwest due to high rents and lack of workshop space. How can we improve our employment lands to help these small businesses? What are your parties doing to help with this situation? And Dolly, you're first this time.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to pull out a few things that we actually have committed for to help small businesses across Scarborough and across the province. And I want to first highlight that during the pandemic, we have seen so many small businesses that were trying so hard to stay open. John, I know that we visited a few of them in our neighborhoods in the Crossroads BIA. I have had the opportunity to visit others in other neighborhoods as well across Scarborough Southwest. Many of them were doing the work that was necessary to provide, groceries, for example, to provide the things that we need, as well as to make sure that they have the ability to have an income so that they can put food on the table, they can pay their rent, their mortgage. And unfortunately, many of them had to close their doors. Many of them were not able to keep up with their rent or their insurance, and the government provided very little or disqualified a lot of businesses who did not meet the criteria for the grants, for example, something that I pushed really hard on. In fact, just about a month or so ago, before the House adjourned, one of the things that I did was out of frustration, and I talked to quite a few businesses, which was, why don't you give me everything that you have in your file, and I will just one last time ask the ministry, why did they exclude you or qualified and did not give you the grant? And we were able to do a final push and support some of the businesses as well, which is very unfortunate because there are so many businesses that deserve the grant. So I want to highlight a few things. Making sure that we have the small business recovery grant, which is number one. The other thing is improving commercial insurance so that it's affordable for businesses as well. And then obviously looking at rent, I know I was able to help a few of the businesses to stay where they are. Some of them had to move and find new spaces. We also need to renew the Tenancy Act. We also need to have a Buy Ontario plan so that we support these businesses that are working so hard, that are making goods in Ontario, and why don't we do our best to support them as well? We also need to have things like community benefits agreements so that people are able to work hard within our communities and have the support that they need within this. And when we do things like this kind of projects, we actually support the businesses so that they are able to afford things like the increase in minimum wage or things like the benefits, so that the Ontario benefits, for example, for workers will actually help a small business who has an employee who is now able to stay healthy through the government programs, for example. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Dolly. Kara, same question.
Cool. So you may not know, or you do, but Mike Schreiner is an entrepreneur. So he has made sure that in our platform, we have lots of good things for businesses. But one of them, in terms of rent, we want to create rent control guidelines for year-over-year increases that apply to all commercial tenants, including new tenants, and implement a mechanism to enforce rules and resolve disputes. We want to undertake a review of regulations in order to weed out red tape and, cost disproportionately affected small businesses. And then also create standardized leases to ensure fairness and transparency and ensure that priority is given to existing tenants when leases are up for renewal. Because like we've talked already about how important housing is, and you know, I think we can have both. And it's an unfortunate part of Scarborough Southwest that, you know, we have all these houses and then we have these kind of roads that, you know, like we have a lot of storage going up, for example. You know, storage is, you know, we need it. It has to be somewhere, of course, but they don't employ many people, yet they take up huge swaths of land. So, you know, there's options for maybe having more of a hybrid system as well, like amending zoning rules to allow for small businesses, such as corner stores, to open within residential neighborhoods. You know, I think there's a way of getting both, but I agree, like we just need, and I think it comes back to those green jobs I was talking about. We just need to attract these people who are trying to push our communities for the better and really invest in them and help them succeed within Scarborough Southwest. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you both for those answers. Now, next question. With food prices continuing to rise, food security is a growing concern for residents of Scarborough Southwest. Will your government commit to boosting income supports to make sure people can put food on the table, stop sprawl and highways to protect valuable farmland and support local food economies? And that's Kara, you're first.
I feel like they're reading from our platform, you know, to ask this question, because we want to do all of those things, you know, like, yeah, like urban sprawl is a huge problem. Like paving over farmland for highways, I don't know about you, but there's enough highways here. Like we just need to make the ones that we have more efficient. And we do have lots of programs to help support farmers in Ontario. We also have programs that we'd like to implement to help retailers, you know, provide Ontario produce for a good price. Because it feels like it's really reversed. Like I feel like back in the day, like way before any of us were born, like foreign fruit and vegetables would have been way more expensive, and now all of a sudden it's like the more affordable option. Like that's not right. So yeah, I think it's just about growing local, and as much as we can support that within our own province, it's just going to help with supply chain issues. It's going to help if anything ever happens again, you know, in Canada. I think we learned how important it is to produce things within our own communities, and like I mentioned before, just like investing in community not farms, but gardens, you know, trying to focus on like rooftop gardens. There's a lot of space out there, and like the more gardens we have, like the cleaner our air gets, and the nicer, you know, our communities smell as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Dolly.
Thanks so much, John. I want to start off by saying we're the only party that's going to make sure that we cancel Highway 413, which is a disaster. And not to mention, there are so many risks that come with it, especially when we're talking about you know, green spaces that we need to protect, and to be able to have farmlands, valuable farmlands. And thank you for that question, because it's all also about supporting local economies, supporting, making sure that we are addressing the main theme of this debate, which is climate change. And we really need to focus on what has the government done over the last 4 years as well, when we talk about NZOs, or the way a lot of the green spaces that have been removed, or the way we kind of face the threat with conservation authorities or the green belt. And then when we talk about food security, I want to say, and I love the food banks we have, but we know that they're not the solutions. We know that people shouldn't have to go to a food bank to get food, put food on the table. But even myself, I have gone to volunteer or to support the food banks, because that was the only solution that we had for the immediate need, so that people have food on the table. One of the things that we the NDP will do is to make sure that we increase ODSP and OW, So the first year, 20%, and the next year by another 80%. So if we double the rate of ODSP and OW so that people are actually able to afford rent, they're able to afford groceries and to be able to have a life and to actually get out of the cycle of poverty. It's something that we are hearing a lot, from experts and many politicians as well, the term legislated poverty. And I talked about this yesterday as well. This whole systemic legislated poverty, because of failures within our governments after governments, we haven't allowed people to get out of poverty, get out of the cycle of being on OW, for example. As soon as someone has a job and they're, it's probably a minimum wage job, or they're not able to, they're just making just enough and they want to be able to continue, all of a sudden you have clawbacks. And this is the reason why many people are not able to get out of the cycle of poverty. So it ends up bringing them back to square one, which is extremely difficult. We also want to relaunch the basic income pilot, which is allowing people to have an opportunity to make enough money as well. And then complete.
Okay, thank you, Dolly.
Check out our full platform online.
Thank you. Okay, now we've got a transit question, a Scarborough transit question. If elected, will you help fund the Eglinton East LRT? Toronto City Council has allocated $1.2 billion to connect Kennedy Station to Malvern via UTSC. A connection to Malvern has been debated for over 30 years. Now provincial and federal funding is needed. Dolly?
I'm just trying to read the question.
You can see it there.
So I actually have the exact wording that I'm going to read because this is something that I signed on with the TTC riders, as well as something that we have in our platform that I'm really proud of because we were actually able to, I myself was able to contribute to the platform as well. So in terms of Scarborough specifically, we want to make sure that we help people get to where they need to go within Scarborough. This is a huge problem, even for people who live in one corner of my riding of Scarborough, of our riding of Scarborough Southwest to get to the other corner. And sometimes you need multiple buses. It's a long wait. And one of the biggest issues that we face is what the government has done with subway extensions or the hopes and dreams that were sometimes shown. And I have seen some of the memes as well. So if elected, yes, I will definitely help make sure that we allocate the funding that is necessary to make sure that we don't just end at Kennedy Station, but we allow for us to get through Scarborough. This has been debated for way too long. I will make sure I work with the federal government and provincial and municipal governments for other issues like road safety with the municipality, for example, or immigration with federal. This is something that I can definitely work on to make sure that they're invested. We, the NDP, have a commitment to make sure that we're doing the extension. We also have a commitment to make sure that we are not only doing the operating funding of the 50%, but have a commitment to make sure that the building takes place. And I know that the 1.2 billion, for example, those numbers fluctuate as well, depending on how long the delay happens in building. So, and I anticipate that as well. So I don't want to say a specific number right now because we do have specific numbers in our budget allocated for infrastructure. And that number might change depending on how long the delay is. And so we need to make sure that we're not delaying anymore. We get to building and then people are able to get from one location to another in Scarborough and across this province, but especially Scarborough.
Thank you. Thank you, Kara.
Yeah, I think like we really want to put like not even just the Eglinton East LRT, but we want to put all transit options ahead of everything. Like we're gonna stop with this, stop with Highway 413. Like specifically Eglinton East LRT, like I would really love to see the existing LRT that we built up and going first before, but I do think we need, like we're like a renowned city and our transit system is like kind of laughable. So like for me personally, like as much expansion of subways, LRT is definitely something I'm going to be on board with. And we have a ton of money going towards transit. I like we don't have something allocated just for Eglinton East LRT, but I'd imagine that would be in there. And right now the federal government is really investing in transit as well. So, we're committed to working with all the governments to, make this happen because, I think the theme is that Scarborough has been neglected as far as TTC goes. And, you know, there's a ton of people here. There's a ton of you know, new immigrants too. Like maybe it's wrong of me to assume, but like when you're lower income, I couldn't afford a car for a long time. And I actually got my first car when I was living in Scarborough Southwest. And then I got a bunch of parking tickets all the time. So that's another issue maybe that we could deal with. But you know, it's like transit is just so important. It's so important for equity, and Scarborough needs as much built up as we can give it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now on to something else completely different. Well, somewhat different. Ontario Power Generation has plans to build a small modular nuclear reactor at the Darlington Nuclear Station, even though it would be much more costly than renewable energy and would not come online in time to address the climate crisis. What is your party's position on small modular reactors? Kara, you're first.
This is a really hard question for me because I am an electrician. I do believe in nuclear reactors as a green option, but that's not my party's stance. And I understand why. Nuclear reactors are expensive. They can be dangerous, even though I do believe, you know, everybody's scared of Chernobyl. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry. There's way too much oversight. We are, you know, I really think that when we want to make everything, you know, run off electricity, we need the electricity. And Niagara Falls just isn't quite enough, you know, to produce for the rest of the province. So the idea of these like mini reactors, I think, is a great idea. It's a lot safer. It's easier to manage. It gives a lot of good quality jobs, and which, you know, just helps our communities. But the problem is what to do when the nuclear has given us everything it has, and that's a problem. There isn't a great way to dispose of nuclear. And, you know, there is a project happening in Northern Ontario where they are going to kind of dig in, I believe it's a bedrock, and, you know, bury it. But, you know, we have to keep telling the next generation, be careful, don't go here. You know, it's not the best solution. We need electricity. I think it's better than, you know, a lot of the other energy options out there, but or energy producing options, but it's just, I don't think our technology is there yet. You know, hopefully, you know, with battery technology, we can kind of produce some alternatives. But I think if we want a greener economy, we kind of need to go nuclear for now until something better comes along. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Dolly.
Thanks so much, John. I actually had the privilege, so I feel like I have a little bit of an advantage on this question, because I used to work as a research analyst with the Society of Energy Professionals and represented hydro workers, and it's been a privilege for me to learn a lot about the electricity system in our province, as well as really, you know, being the chief coordinator of the campaign to save our electricity system in this province, where we fought to save on Toronto Hydro as well as Osaka Hydro. It has taught me how complicated the system is as well, and how important it is when we talk about power generation, when we talk about green energy, when we talk about jobs. All of these pieces come together. And it's very difficult to answer a specific question without really thinking about everything else. And I think that's what you know, Cara was also trying to get to in terms of the difficulty you have, because you have to make sure, like I have constituents here who, you know, always remind me of the different types of jobs we have. I've also had the opportunity to visit things like the OPG, for example, or Pickering or Bruce Power, where I got a chance to tour and learn what's going on. I understand what happens when we have to store, or the need for affordable power as well in our province. So all of that put together, the NDP is still working with researchers to understand what is safe and how do we go about making sure that whether we're talking about small modular reactors or our nuclear power stations, whether it's Darlington or any other ones, for example, how do we make sure that we're actually talking about storage in the safest way possible, but also as we, if we're focusing on a decommission on an old station, for example, we do it in the best way possible that creates jobs, that focuses on employees who are going to lose their jobs, for example. Do we have alternative options? All of those pieces need to be together in talking about all of these pieces. And so it's very difficult for me, and I don't want to give you an answer on just saying this is the party's position, because it goes much more than that, and I can't answer that in 2 minutes. So if anyone wants to come by our office, I'll be happy to talk all about power generation and the Ontario hydro system, as well as what we have going on in terms of the current system and what we can look forward to in our Green New Democratic deal as well, which talks about job.
Okay. Thank you, Dolly. Thank you, Dolly. Next question, though, from an audience member. I would like to know how your party would unite. Sorry, it moved on me there. I would like to know how your party will unite the division of Canadians that has happened in our country and city over this pandemic in the past couple of years here. How would you unite our citizenship, I guess? Dolly, you're first.
Thanks so much, John. That's a really difficult question. I think and we have faced it in Scarborough Southwest as well. I know that people have a lot of hurt inside. People, during the pandemic, there are times people felt divided on things like vaccine or masks, for example. We've also had people who thought that it was okay to come and vandalize our office, which is the community's office. It is a constituency office that is a safe space for everybody. And my biggest effort has been to make sure that regardless of political stripes, we make sure that our community office is a welcoming space for everyone. What I found really incredible is people who have never been NDP, who have never even imagined voting for the Orange Party, for example, came forward and loved the work that we have done. Have been supportive and actually showed support even when we're facing these kind of situations, came forward with flowers and chocolates to our team because of the work that we were doing. And it really goes back to what we need to do, which is making sure that we're here for our neighbors, here for our community. Before becoming an MPP, I'm a resident of Scarborough Southwest, and I've worked hard to make sure that we've focused on what our neighbors need. How do I best represent our local community? And how do I make sure that anything that people face in this community, whether they voted for me or not, whether they belong to the NDP or not, regardless of the walks of life or their color of their skin or anything, these people of Scarborough Southwest make sure that they're heard and they're represented. If we have every single politician, every single community representative feel this way and fight this way, we can actually get something done and make sure that we unite our country, unite our province. That goes back to the same thing for the Prime Minister as well. When a group of people want to come and talk to you, make sure that you listen to them. When any organizations, for example, want to get how hurt they are, whatever they're feeling, let's make sure that we provide that space to make sure that they're heard. One of the things we have done is have open office hours every Friday morning for anything that you want to come and share with. For the past 4 years, you never hear a politician do that because you have to book an appointment to go through this whole cycle. For us, it was, no, if you want to come and see your MPP, you can come and walk in and give your opinion and have that space.
Thank you. Thank you, Dolly. Kara.
Yeah, like Dolly said, this is a really difficult question. But I think at the end of the day, people just want to be listened to. And like Dolly said, so just making the effort to hear people. I actually got thanked. I don't know how, but I have a lot of conspiracy theorist friends apparently. And not everything is conspiracy theory that they bring up, but a lot of times they would thank me for just listening and not getting upset. So I think that is a quality we need to kind of bring into politics. And, the Green Party is open to working with everybody. And I just really think you have to listen with an open mind, open heart. And a lot of people lost their jobs for their beliefs. I know TTC was hiring a lot of people because people were refusing to get vaccinated because they didn't believe in it. And, that's all right. And it sucks that there was not more ways to accommodate people who didn't want to go with the crowd. You know, like even I've heard of even people getting fired when they work from home because it was a company policy. So I'm not sure how we as politicians could impact that, but I think at the end of the day, working with people who you know, for whatever reason, just don't I know I'm trying to think of a diplomatic way of saying, but like who don't want to get vaccinated, you know, if you don't want to wear masks, like there are ways of accommodating people who you know, have decided that like that isn't for them. And I think at the end of the day, just having kind of understanding and not making these blanket statements about groups of people, you know, yeah, I'm just not sure if I really answered your question, but I just think like we need to come back together because we're Canadians. This is an awesome place to live, and it makes me sad that not everybody felt that way. I was thankful to live here during the pandemic, you know, and I want everybody else to be kind of more on board with that. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Kara. Okay, last question, and then we'll get closing remarks from both of you. So this is the last question from an audience member. Younger generations are being priced out of the city entirely, and entire neighborhoods have been losing population in Toronto. Building new below-market, affordable, and deeply affordable housing is so important for geographical income and generational equity. What will your government do to support below-market housing? Will you commit to maximizing use of provincial and public lands for affordable housing, including GO Transit and parking lots? And Kara, you're first this time.
Oh, I've never heard of this idea of using the GO Transit parking lots for this, but I also have never heard the term below market. I think it's a nicer way to say affordable because, you know, you hear of affordable units in buildings and they're like $100 per month cheaper than the average rent that is already crazy high, you know? So yeah, we have lots of initiatives like, you know, we want to build, you know, more community housing and just like supportive of, like, I really don't think they're young people initiative. I think they're just like people initiative, like, you know, trying to just like pay for training so you guys can get great jobs, you know, green jobs. And like, really, it's just, it comes back to that housing. It comes back to zoning laws, you know, stop making these like mini mansions when you could have 4, you know, respectable units in a place. You know, I think when people think of housing, they actually think of a house. And the reality is like, there's a lot of great options that aren't like a, you know, a detached home. And yeah, and I think like we just need to really work with city planners and like they said, maximizing the use of provincial and public lands, because you know we don't want to pave over everything. You know, we need to keep some green spaces. We need, you know, I think if I'm understanding, like you want to eradicate GO Transit parking lots. I don't know that that would work if we're trying to, you know, promote GO Transit and you know, promote people commuting as much as possible using public transit. But I do think we can definitely optimize the space we have for, you know, housing and for you know, oh shit, I forget what it's called, employment zone areas, not employment, but I think you guys know what I'm trying to say. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Dolly.
Thanks so much, John. And I want to thank the person, or is it Dawn, for this question, because it allows me to actually say a few things that I was going to list before, which allows for people to be able to have home ownership and for us to have more housing in this province. And I'll start off with the Ontario NDP, if we will end exclusionary zoning, we will increase the supply of housing options that are affordable and complete, and make sure that housing is done in a complete neighborhood, complete communities way, which I know that one of the organizations that's here today, talked about, and I had interviews with quite a few of them, and some of them are constituents who talked about ideas as well. So there are a few things that we want to do, which includes, for example, offer first-time home buyers helping with down payment, for example, repairing the Ontario social housing stock and committing to building new affordable homes. The other thing that I talked about, which is so important and I'm really passionate about, is co-op housing. I hear from so many seniors, for example, who tell me how important co-op housing is and how it's such a great model, and we need to build more, and we have invested a certain amount of, we have a real commitment to invest in co-op housing as well. I want to highlight a few things that we want to do. 100,000 new units for affordable housing, including 22,000 Indigenous owned and operated community housing units. We also want to implement the Ontario Nonprofit Housing Association and the Co-op Housing Federation plan to extend the life of 260,000 affordable homes. I also want to highlight that we want to make sure that we are delivering 60,000 new homes to support over the next 10 years. And in order to make sure that we're addressing some of the concerns that I think highlighted in this question, we need to make sure that we crack down on speculators, both resident and non-resident, to make housing more affordable. We also need to make sure that we ensure that the landlord-tenant board is fair, is efficient. We need to reinstate equitable rent controls for everyone. And the other thing I should mention is it's offering a shared equity loan of up to 10%. Which is income tested for first-time buyers to use for their down payment. And I know that they also mentioned a few things in terms of committing to maximizing provincial and public lands for affordable housing. And I think this is the only time that I would say, but Don, come by and I'll answer the rest of the question as well.
Okay, well, thank you. I don't need to come by, but whoever wrote this question, you can certainly connect with Dolly. It wasn't Don. Don would have, Don's putting our questions up here. But whoever asked this question can certainly connect with Dolly. And we'll get into this actually right now as we get into our closing statement. So perhaps the candidates will also give you an opportunity and emails and websites and where they can go and how they can connect with you in the next couple of weeks. But first of all, before we get to this, I just want to remind everyone that this, we have Kara and Dolly that we're going to talk to now. Kara from the Green Party and Dolly from the NDP. Earlier we had on Lisa Patel from the Liberal Party. Also, Brett Snyder was invited from the PC Party, but he declined the invitation. So we are going to now go to our closing comments from first Dolly and then Kara. So Dolly, go ahead.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank everyone in Scarborough Southwest for giving me the opportunity to represent all of you for the last 4 years. It's been an incredible honor and a privilege for me to do this. I made one particular promise when I was elected in 2018, which was to make sure that I will make sure that the concerns that you raise with me, I take that to Queen's Park. I did not want to make big promises that I could not keep, but I wanted to make sure that the voice of Scarborough Southwest is heard loud and clear in Parliament. We had open office hours that I talked about every Friday morning to make sure that I get to listen to the feedback of our community. And when it comes to issues like vaccination, road safety, childcare, transit, small business support, housing, seniors care, for example, all of these issues I highlighted in Parliament, and I've actually passed multiple bills in Parliament and been able to push the government on issues that have never been done before. Some of the things that I feel really proud of. And you might notice that even government members sometimes don't get to pass or push the government on these kind of important issues. And I think it's really important to highlight the work that we have been able to do in this riding and the accomplishments that we have had across the last 4 years. When I talk to people like Reed Zhao, for example, or Matt, who talked about their grandparents and the struggles that they faced being in senior care home, for example, long-term care homes, and what took place over the last 2 years during the pandemic, I have highlighted those issues in Parliament and been able to address the need for things like unannounced inspections, the need for more care, need for more PSWs, and just respect and dignity for our seniors. These kind of issues were really important to me, and I made sure that we bring that front and center, especially for Scarborough Southwest. During the pandemic, we've been able to fight for vaccines very, very successfully, making sure that from going from one of the most risked with COVID infected areas to one of the highest vaccinated communities and lowest COVID infected areas. And I was really proud of the work that we have done together. You have welcomed me as your representative in 2018, and I hope that we can continue doing the work that we started. We created a movement that includes people of all walks of life, regardless of your political stripe, because for me, it was about the community, it was about representing all of you, and I hope to continue doing that. If you need more information, please go to dollybegum.com, that's DOLYBEGUM.com, and check out our platform. Or if you have any question, come by 227 Kingston Road, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you on this platform.
Thank you, Dolly. Thank you, Dolly. Kara.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for the organizers and John for giving me this opportunity to speak. You know, polls are open. Make sure everybody goes out and votes. I think like the Green Party's in a really unique position because we are not your typical party. We have a really open-minded platform. We also, we aren't so into, you know, Mike Schreiner doesn't expect me to listen to the exact thing that he says or I'll get kicked out of the Green Party. So I think I have a really unique opportunity to serve Scarborough Southwest in the ways that it needs, irregardless of like, you know, what other you know, locations require. And I just think that the Green Party deserves your vote. We are getting stronger. Mike Schreiner is a wonderful leader. And really, I feel like the debates show that he is, you know, he really has a great grasp of what people in Ontario want and need. And I just would love the opportunity to serve the constituents and also help Scarborough Southwest. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Kara. Thank you, Dolly. And I guess I just have a bunch of thank yous here. Thank you for answering all those questions. We had so many questions come in, we could not get to them all, but there are some great questions out there, and I really encourage you to contact all of the candidates to get those answers to those questions. There's just too many for us. As a matter of fact, from what I understand, we had a really good group watching this all night. I know it's an awkward sort of thing. You don't get the energy and such to get an idea of how many people were watching, but quite a few people in Scarborough Southwest were watching tonight. So thank you for answering these questions. So now I'd just like to, you know, close off by saying thank you to our candidates for coming out. Thank you to everyone who worked to put this thing together. It's you know, a crazy thing. 2.5 years ago, none of us would have even known how to do any of this, but it's amazing what we have accomplished this evening. Thank you all to who have watched and asked those questions, and I hope some of you got some answers. And please remember to vote on June 2nd, or even better yet, the advanced polls open today. You can go out tomorrow and vote then. Good evening, Scarborough Southwest. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your night. Take care.